All right, I'm going to walk you through how to set up this modified Bestler CS21 copy stand. This thing's a beast. It's really heavy, it's strong, but it's really easy to put together. It's going to come in a couple of main components. You're going to have your base plate, and you're going to have your rail with head. You're also going to get a handle with a little screw that you're going to put on here. You're going to get a couple of wrenches, a hex wrench and an end wrench. You're going to get a couple of levels with it for obvious purposes. I'm also including a box full of Velcro and wire ties and double stick tape and a little cutter so that you have a pleasant experience assembling your rig. First thing you want to do is you want to place the rail on your base plate. It's held on by 5 large Phillips head screws. Have someone help you because the rail is heavy. It needs to be aligned with these 5 holes. You simply put the screws up through the bottom and tighten them with a Phillips screwdriver. That's it. That's the extent of it. And then your rail's on there. The next thing you're going to do, when you mount your knob, this shaft has a flat spot. So the knob has a corresponding flat inside. That way you can't strip it. So you rotate the knob until it goes onto the shaft. You take the Phillips screw, you line it up, you screw it on home, and you tug it down. That's it. Now your handle, you have a lock on the other side. I'm going to release the lock, and now I can turn the handle to move the copy stand. The next thing we're going to do is go over the wiring harness, its components, and then finally we're going to mount it to the copy stand. But that's it for this one. Okay, this is an explanation of the wiring harness for the custom CS21 copy stand. I'm going to start from the nose and work my way to the tail. This is the part that mounts to the camera. Now before we start, I've flagged this wiring harness at a point with this long wire tie tail. And this is going to tell you where you're going to start. You're going to mount this on the back of your copy stand. And we'll get to that when we mount it. But you're going to see this big piece of wire tie on there, and that's what it's for. Coming to your camera end, you have a power supply for your camera. You have the USB 3 with strain relief for your camera. You have a shutter release cable. You have the power supply for your flash remote control. And you've got the connection for the actual electronic rail. Moving down, we have the power supply brick for the camera. The wiring harness spurs off, and you have the actual rail controller itself. The rail controller has 4 wires. It has the power, the USB, the shutter, and the rail wire itself. This is all detailed in your manual with circles and arrows as to where the wires go. You cannot put these in the wrong socket. They're all proprietary. Moving down, we've got a nice long extension here. This is going to go to your computer. You have 2 cables here. You have a USB, let me get this oriented so you can see it. You have a USB 2 with a red collar on it, and a USB 3. You can see it's a USB 3, it's blue inside. This goes to a designated USB port on the back of your computer, as does this, and that is also detailed in your manual. So this is 3 and this is 2. Lastly, we have to plug some of this stuff into the mains. So what I've done is I've supplied you with a power strip. This has an Australia plug on one end. This will operate on 110 or 240. It has a power indicator light, and you can see it comes on. The controller gets powered up. So this is the power for the controller, the flash remote, and the camera power supply. The monitor will also be plugged into this. The computer needs to be plugged into a separate power supply, preferably a UPS backup power supply. So when you come in the morning, you leave your camera on, you leave this on, you leave everything on, and you turn this on in the morning, everything comes powered on. At the end of the day, you shut this off and it puts everything off, and you shut your computer off independently. That's it for the wiring harness. The next thing we're going to do is mount it. All right, with the stand assembled and the wiring harness detailed, we're ready to put it all together. So, as I explained before, the wiring harness has been tagged with a big zip tie coming off the back end of it. So what you want to do is you want to take I'm going to take my rail and I'm actually going to slide this forward to where it kind of gets out of my way. Snug it down. I'm going to take my wiring harness and position it so the rear of the harness with the tag on it is approximately at the end of my rail head. I'm going to take a wire tie, put it in a zip tie, and tie it off. Now, I'm going to take off the old one. Don't need it anymore. Pop that in position, and that's that. I'm going to end up putting one up here on the front, but first I'm going to get my camera and rail mounted. So what I want to do is first I want to mount my rail. So I pulled this ahead so I have a little bit of room. The rail has 3 possible mounting points. I'm going to use the center. You must mount it with the motor on the top. If you mount this with the motor on the bottom, your up and down controls are going to be backwards. So the motor must be on the top. This is a quick release plate. This will hold your camera. It's pretty simple. There's a 1/4-20 bolt that goes into these holes, so we'll take the center one. I have a captured 1/4-20 knob. I'm going to work with it somewhat in the center. I'll put that in there. I'll tighten this up. And before I tighten it all the way, I'm going to look at it and make sure it's where I want it. That's about center. I'll take one of my levels, put it on top, and get it roughly level. Before I do my final leveling, everything needs to be tightened down. So now my rail is mounted. It's that easy. Loosen this up. Now when you're running the system, if you're shooting smaller material, you get far more stability when your head is pushed back closer to your rail. The further your weight is overhung, the less stable it's going to be. This is great if you're shooting with a 35mm single pop, an entire drawer or something big. But when you're doing your stacks, try and keep your camera back closer to your rail. So let's put it into a location something like this. And I'm going to snug these down. And this is where I'm going to call home for right now. Now, I'm going to take this cable and I'm going to drape it up over here and I'm going to secure it by going through this hole up and around with a wire tie, just because I want to keep it out of the way. And I'll take my motor wire and incorporate it into that tie as well, because I don't want it flying around. So that's simple. Zip ties are just a gift. Doesn't have to be tight, just has to be up and out of the way. I'm going to grab my little snipper. This snipper comes in your kit, by the way, so that feel free. Snip all the wire ties you want to. Now, when you get your camera, it'll come with the quick release plate sort of laying sideways in the box like that. The way you want to have this positioned when you go to put your camera together, you want to slide it in. You want to slide this over to where it stops on the rubber bumper, and you want these tongues facing the same way your lens would face. You then take a coin and snug it down. You can look at it and try to make it as square and level as possible. Snug it down. It's going to go on. I'll show you how this goes on. It snaps on real easily. It has 2 tongues and you have 2 grooves here in the other end of the quick release. You simply lay the tongues down into the grooves and press, and that locks it in position. To release it, you pull the release back and press the silver button, and then you can release it. Again, to put it back on, lay it in the grooves and press it. It locks it in the same place every single time. So what I like to do is I like to leave my camera a little on the loose side. I lock it in position when I have my stand where I want it. Then I go ahead and I kind of tweak my camera a little bit to where my level is dead on. I take it off, and then I'll go ahead and really cinch that down. So now my camera is locked into place. That's it. The next thing I need to do is I need to connect my rail and camera connections. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. We can see here where the camera connections lie. I'm going to tell you from experience, it's easier to put these small wires in the bottom first. So the first wire that's going to go in here is going to be the trigger wire, which goes here in the back. This fires the shutter. We're going to just press that in. The second wire that's going to go in here is going to be our USB 3 cable. This has a really big strain relief. So what you need to do, you get your wire in here, you plug it in the camera, you press the strain relief into position, and you screw the 2 screws down home, which lock it in. What Canon found out years ago was that the most vulnerable part of these cameras is the USB connection, and they have a tendency to get loose. And when they get loose on these new cameras, it's the entire main board that becomes a problem, and you end up having to basically buy a new camera. So you don't want that to happen. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to put the power supply in, and I'm going to spin this around so you can actually see that. Hold on. It gets busy when it gets weight. Okay, good. Now, the camera supply, the power supply, actually, I opened the door on the bottom, and you can see how how the power supply fits in. There is a little tiny rubber door right here. Can you see that? This door has to be opened and out of the way so that your camera power supply can fit in. So the power supply fits in. You see how the wire is trained through the power supply? It locks into place, the wire goes through that door, and the cover goes on. If you have to force that cover on, it's because your power supply is bound up and the camera will not start. So that's a key feature. I'm going to flip it around one more time. Okay. The last thing you have to do is mount this, and this is a battery eliminator for the Interfit S1 wireless remote. Now, if you look at this wireless remote, you'll see there's a negative sign and a positive sign. There's also a dummy green battery in there. Leave that there, you'll need it. On your battery eliminator, you also have a positive sign and a negative sign. You simply match the two. So here we've got positive here, and we've got positive here. So I'm going to take the battery eliminator, putting it in my unit, and now it's got a ribbon cable. I want to set that ribbon cable up to where it's not near the latch of the door, so I'm going to put it on the side here. And you close the battery compartment. Now you're set. Now you can mount this on your camera and secure it with the collar. And you may wish to tie this up out of the way with a small wire tie up here. That's entirely up to you. Again, you have a box of wire ties and plenty to do that with. So that's it. The camera is now set up and leveled this way. And the remote control is set up. It's got a power supply, the rail set up. You're done. The last thing you're going to have to do is verify that you've got the level of the camera this way correct. And the way you're going to do that, when you have, again, I can't stress this enough, you want to have it in its home position, right where you're going to use it. You're going to want to put this, again, these are magnetically mounted. Drop one on the base plate and notice your level. If you're not level, you have to have the camera in the same off-level position as your base in order for it to be normal. If your base is off level and then you try to make your camera normal, you're shooting at an angle. So the best thing to do is to make your table level, like you move things around. We're right on level here. So I'm going to put the camera here at a level on the camera. Now I have to move this level a little bit, so I'm going to go back to my adjustment screw here in the rear with my big Phillips screwdriver. Can I walk around the front? Okay. And I'm looking at my level, and I'm turning my screw. Now my level's dead on. So that gives me a fine adjustment. So now my camera is level this way, and it is also level this way. So now I know when I'm doing stacks, especially at high mag, I'm not shooting off to the side. That's really important. It's great to check this every once in a while. So I put these magnetic mounts in these. You can stick these on the side or the base plate, keep them out of the way. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the rail. It's a simple twist connector. It has a key and a key way. You can only go in one way. So you set the rail up, put the wire in, you give it a quarter of a twist, and you're done. It just sits up out of the way. It's not gonna bother anything. That's it. It's already connected to the mains, and then we're going to connect it to the computer. That's it.